When it comes to growing SaaS businesses, there's this one thing that people don't talk about. It's called the SaaS dead zone. It happens at 1 million ARR, at 3 million, at 6 million, and even at 10 million. We've seen it at 20 million. It's when your product market fit, which you have to earn at every stage of these inflection points, kind of falls out of market. It's when you go to market that was working just fine, all of a sudden stops working. Meet Sachin Kamdar. He's the CEO of Parse.ly. And when I got on a call with him, he was telling me about his story, about how they hit the dead zone after scaling their company all the way to 10 million ARR. Now, fortunately for them, they were able to figure out a way around. They were able to reinvigorate growth, drive profitability. They were able to actually exit to Automattic as one of their largest acquisitions. All of those things came together, but in that point, when they hit that dead zone, it looked pretty scary. And in this episode, I'm going to walk you through the 3 principles you absolutely need to know that Sachin and I will be presenting to you on exactly how to avoid the dead zone, what to do if you're in the dead zone, and why the dead zone exists. And when you know about these principles, you'll be able to apply it to your own go-to-market strategy to make sure not only do you avoid the dead zones, you're able to accelerate the growth of your SaaS business. Intro. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Unstoppable. I'm TK, and on this channel, I help SaaS founders like you grow your SaaS businesses faster with an unstoppable strategy. Now, if you are new to this channel, welcome. I drop an episode every single Sunday with actionable strategies and tactics on how to grow your SaaS business faster from the trenches, from actual experience. So if you're new, be sure to hit that subscribe button and that bell icon. That way you'll get notified every single time I drop an episode with the TK energy. Now, if you're already part of my coaching programs, if you're part of this fast-growing community, my people, welcome back. It's really awesome to see you over here. I knew about Parse.ly. I'm a huge fan of content. I'm a huge fan of content marketing. I'm a huge fan of analytics and insights, and Parse.ly fit that perfectly. So I've been a huge fan of Parse.ly over the last 13 years that they've been in business. And I also kind of knew Sachin, and I knew his co-founder, Andrew, but I was really surprised when I got a DM from Sachin, and he was like, hey, I watched one of your frameworks, your go-to-market framework, and I followed it, and it helped us turn around the company, and it helped us exit the company. And you have no idea, so I want to tell you this story. And I was like super excited, and I was intrigued. And so I was like, dude, totally. And so anyway, Sachin and I got on a call, and I heard his incredible story and the incredible turnaround that they had. And I was like, you gotta come and talk to the 250 founders that I coach and tell them about the story and how you applied the framework. Like, this is awesome. Like, let's talk about it so that everyone can up-level themselves. His story was amazing about how they got stuck at 10 million ARR, how they reinvigorated growth, how they exited, and all the pieces that came into play as he navigated that journey. And so I thought it would be really great to take the best parts of that interview that we did for the founders that I coach and distill it into the 3 principles that you absolutely need to know to actually accelerate the growth of your SaaS business, and also make sure that you avoid the same dead zones so many founders fall into. So I'll be piecing together these 3 principles. I'll be bringing in Sachin on the key parts to share his story. And by the end of this, I promise you, you'll know exactly what you need to be doing to accelerate the growth of your SaaS business. If you're excited to dig in, go ahead and smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. It really likes it when you do that. And let's go to principle number 1 that we learned about these SaaS dead zones. The first thing you need to know is that there are natural inflection points that exist when you're growing a SaaS business. There's the pre-revenue to some revenue. Then there's the 1 million ARR to the 3 million ARR to the 6 million ARR to the 10 million ARR. And the biggest thing that I've learned as you've gone through these pieces is a lot of SaaS companies lose out of their product market fit. Their go-to-market strategy that was working to get to, say, a few dollars in revenue doesn't take them to 1 million. Or it worked fine to 6 million and then it just stops working. This is what we call dead zones. And I'll talk more about the dead zones, but what you need to know is in each of these inflection points that you are running through in growing your SaaS business, you're gonna have to be prepared to continue to revamp your go-to-market strategy, because otherwise there's a very good chance you will fall out of product market fit or your go-to-market strategy that was working will turn stale. So that's principle number one. To exactly explain how Sachin navigated these inflection points. Now, mind you, they didn't have to deal with the dead zone until they got to 10 million ARR. So the first thing we dug into when I did the live call with Sachin with all the founders that I coached was, cool, let's talk about how you got to 10 million ARR. What were the inflection points? How did that go? So let's hear Sachin talk about that piece.
There's two big buckets that I think we should talk about for the time we have you here that'll be valuable for everyone. The second bucket is really about how did you get to that 10 million and the inflection points there, like maybe a little bit around what was it like to get that first revenue and then to 3 million and then to 10 million, like that's one bucket. And I think the second bucket, which is really the impetus for this call, is that dead zone that SaaS companies get into. And some say it's at 6, some say it's at 10. It's definitely at 20. SaaS companies hit dead zones and plateaus and they have to rediscover. So I want to talk about that because you hit that and then you found a way around it. And that's kind of how we connected. So those are the two broad buckets I want to dig into next.
Totally. Happy to.
Cool. So let's go talk about the next bucket. Like you started, 2008, 2009, crazy times.
Yep.
How long did it take for you to hit like the first million ARR? What did that take? How did you do it? Like, let's talk through that first.
2009 is when we really started the company. December of 2009 is when we raised that first round and we were all in full time on it. So from 2009 to 2012, we launched 3 products, one of which utterly failed, one of which did okay. And then the last one was the one that took off, which was Parsley Analytics. And so that was just a whole thing in and of itself, which is finding the right product market fit and really using a way to pivot our existing technology into new technology with different markets to help make that work. That's probably like a much longer answer, but I'm going to shorten it there. So when we launched in 2012, 2013, we launched our analytics product publicly. The real kind of need for it was met when we were working with digital media companies. They were spending 6 figures on enterprise level analytics like Google Analytics 360, Adobe Analytics, where several $100,000. And we came in and we said, we're not going to replace those. We're going to give you something that more of your organization can use, that is going to democratize access to this data and get into the hands of people that really are going to act on top of that. And so that was the pitch. It was, we're going to have cleaner data, better data, and we're going to have it in a way that's way easier to use. And that got us to our first $1 million in ARR between 2012 and 2013, and was largely just the work of me and a single salesperson, just doing outbound sales, right? And that was how we structured that, going after digital media clients. There was nothing sophisticated about it. It was just honing our messaging, going out there, pitching, and getting our first several customers within that scope. So that was getting to the first million. Then we raised our next round of financing, and then we started to scale out the business side of the organization. We started hiring marketing. We started hiring more salespeople, and we really kind of built an inbound program first that was basically generated through events combined with content, which we created ourselves, and some brand awareness. So we weren't doing anything sophisticated on the marketing side to get to the next several $1 million in revenue. It was really just trying to own the digital publisher, digital media space, being as prevalent as possible and working through all of those customers. So that got us to maybe 6 or 7 million in revenue. And then the next few years was kind of a slog. It took us a little bit of time to get to the $10 million mark. And what we kind of recognized leading up to that is that the market that we were going after, even though we thought that we started going international and we thought that there were going to be a bunch of opportunities international, the fact of the matter is that our price point and our, what we needed to make the whole business model work, the total addressable market wasn't as large as we thought. So things just started slowing down, and we started hiring more people because we thought that, we need a bigger sales team or we need a larger marketing org. That's the reason why it's slowing down. But the fact is that it wasn't any of that stuff. It was that we were kind of reaching threshold with our market, going after the kind of digital media, digital publisher space.
Okay, so he gets to 10 million ARR, and then everything slows down, right? And this is one of the things that not a lot of people like to talk about. And this is why I have tremendous amounts of respect for Sachin. He's like, look, I want to get out there and just talk about all the stuff that goes wrong because they don't talk about some of these things. And that's essentially why I started this channel in the first place. So we can bring you these kind of stories from the trenches and give you frameworks to avoid these dead zones or any other issues that come up as you navigate this journey. And so the second principle you need to know about is there are dead zones in SaaS. And you need to know when they are, and you need to take decisive action if you are hitting upon one. Now, it's not guaranteed that you will hit the dead zone. Maybe you'll blast right through 1 million or 3 million or 6 million, but then eventually it may happen. And the biggest principle to know over here is when it does happen, you have to channel your gut as a founder, as the CEO, and you have to be able to take decisive action. Because if you don't take that decisive action, then you will not actually break through to that next inflection point in your SaaS growth. We dug into this on exactly for Sachin, exactly how that dead zone appeared, how they identified it, and what they actually started to think about when they started to see, you know what, there's a dead zone here. Like, what do we do about it? So let's cut into that piece of the interview with Sachin and hear from him.
Okay, so you double down and you kept growing and you focus on the channels at that time that you knew. Maybe now in retrospect, you're like, hey, we can have a more robust go-to-market strategy. But hey, you know what? You focus on what was working. And we tell founders this all the time. If you have one channel that is working, don't discount it. Don't take it for granted. Go double down on it, get more resources and get more momentum, and then figure out what other channels you can open up. So you did that and you kept growing. Now let's get into like dead zones. You've been through it. You've been on the other side of it. You figure out how to fix it. What is a dead zone? Why do they happen? When do they happen?
So a dead zone for us was really when growth started to slow on the new sales side, and sometimes, like there was one time where this happened at the same time, which was really tough. Customer retention started to drop significantly. And we didn't have a clear answer as to why either of those things were happening. And so this was that time period kind of between 2017 through like 2019, where our growth in sales started to slow. And then we started to have churn issues with some of our largest customers. In fact, we had a quarter where 4 of our largest customers, representing a lot of ARR, all churned at the same time within like a month of each other, which is a really big punch to the gut. Because that meant we had to go through, we had decided at that point we weren't going to raise another fundraising round anytime soon. And that kind of like just made that overtly clear. And so we had to go through a round of layoffs to right size the business and get it to profitability as a result of that, which is a very tough thing to do, but ultimately made us way stronger over the long term. So that like was a big dead zone because we didn't have a good reason why. We tried things like going international. We tried going down market to like longer tail publishers, but none of that stuff was really working. And in fact, like some of the churn issues could be pointed towards going after more of the long tail, which made us focus less on those bigger customers. So, you know, I think all that combined was just like really unnerving for us as a business, and we had to figure out what was going on. And so when we right-sized the business to get that through that, we kind of took a lot of our business functions down to zero. We reorged the customer success side to really be focused on instead of just generic customer success rather, to be focused on annual renewals. And like that was where they were really incentivized to perform against. We brought our marketing team basically down to zero. And we had some people that were like helping out with that, but it was basically 0 people in marketing. And then we hired a new chief revenue officer to help us on the sales side in general. He decided to join the company before the shit hit the fan with like our our customer churn. And to his credit though, like when all that stuff happened, I had a beer with him. I was like, hey man, I just want to make sure, like, are you in for this? He's like, yeah, I'm totally in. Like, this is something where it happens, and I didn't join you guys because of a few customers that might churn or not. I joined you guys for the longer term stuff. So kudos to him for sticking around. And And that's when we really had to start rebuilding. And we were able to rebuild. We were able to fix the customer churn issues. We were able to get the company growing again. But it was still kind of slower growth than we would have liked. And I can get to kind of like that's when we were right at the $10 million mark. And that's where we hit like our second dead zone where it was just, and this is where it also comes back to I kind of knew what was the answer and what was going on, but I didn't push it through hard enough until I saw your video, TK.
Okay, we should talk. So these dead zones happen, and I think like on one hand, getting to 6 million or 10 million annual recurring revenue is phenomenal and a great target. And in a way, like it does make you unstoppable because it's like that revenue will just keep on going as long as you tend to certain things. But it's not guaranteed. And so what you're saying is like, look, it happens very often. And we've seen this at 6, 10, 20, particularly at 20 also, where it just slows. You're doing the same thing. It's not like Sachin decided to just go to the beach for like a quarter and it's like, whatever, man, we're good. It just slows and you have to keep reinventing. And that's what you guys, it seems.
You have to keep reinventing. And, at least in B2B SaaS, which partially was in like, I always felt like our growth rate was almost like a step function where, even if you get to the places where we started to grow really exponentially, it was still kind of like right? Like it would go up significantly. And I can almost like look back on our ARR chart and point to the decisions that we made that caused that next phase of growth. And so I think like an important lesson that I took away with dealing with dead zones or just like thinking about the business overall is that you can never be complacent, even if things are going well, because to get to the next level, you have to do something more. Almost every year, you have to do something different. You have to add something to the team, to the strategy, to the product suite, whatever it might be to like really keep that growth rate going. Because if you don't do that and you kind of just rest on your laurels with what you have, eventually that does slow. And again, that's like relative to kind of like mid-market enterprise B2B SaaS. Maybe there's an argument for other types of companies where that's not the case, but don't have experience there.
All right, so that's principle number 1 and 2, right? Are you starting to get this? Principle number 1, there are inflection points. You have to keep working at product market fit, keep revamping your GTM. And principle number 2 is these dead zones do exist. And if you happen to see that happening, if you start to see the slowdown, if you start to detect these things, you feel it in your spidey sense, because that's what founders have, you have to take decisive action. Are you starting to see the power in this? Are you starting to see the power in exactly how important it is to consistently keep working on your go-to-market strategy, on your product market fit so that you get better and better and better? If you're starting to see the power in this, can I just get a yes in the comments below? Also, smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. It really likes it when you do that. Lastly, before I go into principle number 3, if you are in that stage, if you're in the early stage and you're looking to figure out like how important a go-to-market strategy is and you're looking to drive growth to get to that next inflection point, then I encourage you to check out my SaaS go-to-market coaching program, which is the exact framework that we follow that Sachin is describing to actually revamp companies and drive growth for SaaS businesses. Now, you don't have to go anywhere right now. I'll tell you more about it at the end of this video. I'll link to it below, but let's go to principle number 3, which is the most important part on exactly what Sachin did to get out of that dead zone and drive profitability, drive growth, and eventually an exit that was wildly successful. So principle number 3 is you have to consistently revamp your go-to-market strategy, right? What worked for you to get to some revenues will not work for you to get to $1 million. What worked for you to get to $1 million will not work for you to get to 3 million, and maybe 6 million, and maybe 10 million, and maybe 100 million. You have to consistently work at it. And it's the founders, and it happens to the best of us, that are like, get comfortable with like, yeah, this will work. Let's just keep operating the machine. That isn't hyper paranoid about what's our product market fit looking like? What's the market looking like? Is the market big enough? What's our go-to-market strategy? How do we tweak our go-to-market strategy? It's the founder that's not constantly thinking about these pieces and elevating the leadership team. They will fall into the dead zone. And that's perfectly okay, but it's the founders that don't do anything about it to revamp their go-to-market strategy, to continuously revamp and upgrade how they go to market, how they think about their message, their narrative, their ICP. Those are the ones that don't live to tell about the story. And so in this part of the principle, what I want to cut into is exactly what Sachin did, how he approached consistently revamping his go-to-market strategy, and specifically for him, exactly the framework he followed to bring together his leadership team and revamp the go-to-market strategy so that they could unlock that growth. So let's cut into that right now.
I've known Parsley forever. I got on a call with Andrew, I think like 3 years ago for like something. And then you message me and you're like, hey, by the way, can we get on a call? I watched a video of yours, we applied it. And anyway, you don't even know what we sold our company, and the video helped in a small way. I'm like, that's crazy. And so we got on a call.
I didn't even say in a small way. It helped in a large way. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, you're gracious. Thank you. Let's talk about that. So it's slowing, and you're in this desert, and there are multiple deserts, and you're just like, what the fuck is going on? So what was the thing that was like, okay, and you also hinted like there are some things you're feeling in your gut, and as a first-time founder, you never know when to trust your gut fully. Second time, you're like, you know when to trust that guy. So let's walk us through that. What happened? What'd you see the video? What'd you do? Like, how did it break through?
We were slowing, but like I knew you guys could probably even hear why we were slowing. Like we were slowing because we were still in the same market, and that market was not big enough to sustain the growth levels that we wanted. Now, we've always had a belief, though, at Parsley that it's not just the online publisher market that we can serve. We can serve anybody that cares about understanding the value of content they produce. And if you look at any kind of like company nowadays, even a lot of startups, they're producing content for marketing purposes. And I know a lot of founders that I talk to that have content marketing arms that say, yeah, it's like kind of cool, but we have no idea if this actually is adding value to us or not. Maybe, you know, you, TK, excluded this because content is like what you live and breathe here. And that is some of the biggest value that you get out of what you produce. I know that very viscerally. You know, like we had that belief, like everybody that's it cares about producing content is going to need Parsley Analytics. And we even had inbounds coming in from other industries, like from sports and entertainment, from professional services, from investor relations, from, you know, CPG companies. And we were doing deals there. And I just kept on seeing those signals. And I knew like, we have to like break out of this zone of selling to publishers, and we have to go after the broader market because all the signals are pointing to that. And every single time I try to get my team into a room, and maybe I just wasn't convincing enough, they would always put up like obstacles to me. They would say like, yeah, but like this company is an outlier. They're acting like a publisher. That's why we could sell to them. Or, you know, like, yeah, this might be an interesting company to go after, but like that's not a trend. That's just like one company that's doing it. And I kept on getting placed with these objections. And naturally, everybody would just go back to what they were used to, which is selling to publishers. And so I was just like pulling out my head, like, how am I going to get this team to wrap their heads around the fact that there's a much larger opportunity? And Andrew, also, like we would have founder conversations where we would talk about this too. Me and Andrew just be like, how do we make this happen? And I think it was your video on how to run a GTM offsite that I watched. And that video talked about how to structure it in a way where you do have a thesis that you're bringing as the CEO of the company to that meeting, but you're using all the data internally to help lead the horse to the water, to help people come to their own conclusions, and then like build the go-to-market strategy after that. And it all started with a deeper look at what the ideal customer profile was. And so prior to the GTM, the like offsite that we scheduled, and this was with it wasn't just GTM, it was with all of our business leaders, all of the managers underneath the business leaders, all of our product leaders, and all the managers underneath them. So it was a group of maybe like 25 of us that were scheduled to do this. And we started out by just looking at the data and like diving into the data and saying like, listen, if we take a look at the companies and customers that we have that we wouldn't classify as digital media, what is similar about them? What are the like who is using the product? What value are they getting out of it? We really honed in on what that looked like and who that person was, what the titles were. Like we went all in on that stuff. And then from there, we tied that back to like our channels. And we said, okay, well, like, what does that look like in terms of what we're doing from a channel perspective? We just hired a new kind of BDR manager. We just hired a VP of demand gen, and these people were fresh and they had fresh perspectives into this. And they're like, oh yeah, of course we can go after this segment, right? Like, here's all the ways that we can do that. Then we focused on the messaging and like, well, how would we talk to them? What did they say to us when they were buying our product? And then we went to the product itself. It's like, what would help evangelize this even further with this space? And so that happened from the offsite happened in September. And in December, we had changed the business like 180. And we were going after this whole new segment, and it was just flying off the shelves. Like growth rate was up hugely relative to where we were. We were closing deals left and right. I had a stretch goal that I presented to my investors that we would be at a certain, revenue scale with a certain growth rate. I presented that to them in the board meeting, and they're like, "Wait, you guys are trying to do this while staying profitable?" Like, yeah, we can do it all. Like, all of this is possible. And they're like, "Listen, if you guys do this is a whole nother category that you're in. Like, this is really impressive." And not only do we do that, we beat that. And then obviously that led to like a really successful acquisition. But it all started with just pulling at that thread in a thoughtful, more meaningful way than I had done in the past. And like really saying to the team, like, "Listen, we're going to do this as a group, but the data's here. Let's look at the data. Let's use this to reconstruct our whole revenue engine and then tie that back to the product roadmap in a way that's going to generate value for this group of customers."
I think it's so crazy because, as founders, we're essentially creators. Our jobs is to take nothing and create something out of that. And we're good at that. And a lot of times our default lever is to go create something new. But more often than not, in these dead zones, it's not a one more feature. It's how do you really, really understand what you built in the first place that people love, and what aspect of it do you love? So I'm not surprised to hear that it was like the core product was the same. You had a new narrative always informs the roadmap to make it truer, and the pricing packaging. But the true essence of it is still what you guys got to 10 million with. It was just really repivoting. It happens so often. Why do you think that happens? Where our national inclination is, oh, well, we got to like build a new product or a platform or pivot really hard. Whereas it's really more the intangibles of how we talk about the product.
I think the reason why it happens is because part of the repivoting is being true that maybe you haven't operated the current product in the best way possible. And that was certainly our case. Is like we had this product that was comprehensive, that was delivering value, but you're basically saying, "Hey, you didn't point it at the right things. That's kind of on you." It's way more fun, maybe, and way easier to say, "Well, if we built this other thing, if we did this other thing, then that would solve our problems," instead of saying, "Well, you kind of just didn't do it all the way that at full stop that you could have done it then." And so you need to take a really objective look at what you have built today and where you're pointing that at, and figure out if that's the right thing. And sometimes that can be harder because it's a little bit of a scarier truth than saying, "Well, we just need to build an additional thing." And I think for a lot of CEOs and a lot of people on the like business side of the organization, it's easier to point fingers to product and say like, "Hey, product, we just needed this other feature. Like this feature has been asked for like the past like year by X number of customers. If we only had that feature," right? But that never is going to be the solution. A single feature for 99% of you is not going to be the thing that makes it. It's really going to be the intersection of the product, the value, and the customer segment. And for us, it was really about the customer segment and the value that we were communicating to them that needed to change. And once we changed those two areas, the product just fit right in. And that's when the magic happened.
All right, so those are the 3 principles that I had for you from my conversation with Sachin. And I want to thank Sachin so much for being so gracious in sharing his journey so that all of us founders that are in the trenches can learn from him and actually apply these things and just see like, look, go-to-market is important. A framework around go-to-market is real and it works so well. And so just to recap, the principles, number 1, there are natural inflection points as you're driving growth for your SaaS business. In each of these inflection points, you have to keep revamping your go-to-market because there are dead zones. And if you see any sort of slowdown, your spidey sense goes up, you have to take decisive action. And the best way to take decisive action is to consistently look at revamping your go-to-market strategy, your messaging, your ICP, and the way you run your strategy, the way you execute on your go-to-market to make sure that you can hit escape velocity and continue to grow your SaaS business. And you know exactly what to do that. Now, what you may not know is exactly how to build out and execute on a go-to-market strategy. So this is why I run my SaaS go-to-market coaching program. Inside of this program, we help you revamp your go-to-market strategy, go from an undefined go-to-market strategy to a well-defined and scalable one by building out your ICP, crafting your differentiated messaging with a manifesto, and then running a consistent set of sales and marketing activities that are scalable, called the Broadway Show, to drive pipeline and drive growth. And you work directly with me when you join the program. We have over 100 founders in the program where I give you the step-by-step instructions on exactly how to adopt this framework. I also coach you directly to make sure that you are set up for success and you're fully supported. So if you want to learn more about this and you want to revamp your go-to-market strategy, you want to accelerate the growth of your SaaS business, just go to tkcater.com/GTM, tkcater.com/GTM, and all the details are going to be in there. And one thing worth mentioning is we have had founders join this program in all different revenue brackets, because what we found is, just like Sachin, there are dead zones that happen at 10 million ARR or 20 million ARR, or when they're launching a second product. And so we've had upwards of 75 million ARR founders go through this go-to-market program, because what they found was, regardless of what their current revenue was, they didn't have a path forward, so they had to reset their go-to-market. And of course, we have plenty of early stage founders that are driving a 3 million ARR to accelerate their growth with a scalable go-to-market strategy. So if you want to work together, just go to tkcater.com/GTM, and all the details are in there. You just sort of fill out a little form, we'll get on a call, and we'll make sure that you're set up for success and you're the right fit based on where you are in your business. tkcater.com/GTM. Also, if you got value from this video, please smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. I also drop an episode every single Sunday with actionable strategies, tactics, and stories from the trenches, just like Sachin shared, on how to grow SaaS companies. So be sure to the subscribe button and that bell icon if you're not subscribed already, so that you get notified every single time I drop an episode. If you're part of a Slack group, a WhatsApp group of other founders who get value from this video, please share it with them. We want to spread our message. We want to help as many SaaS founders as possible. And lastly, remember, everyone needs a strategy for their life and their business. When you are with us, yours is going to be unstoppable. I'm TK, and I'll see you in the next episode.